And the American Indian lived here, and we told the American Indian, well, we'll take care of you. And we started slaughtering them and butchering them. We drove them across west of the Mississippi and said, you can have everything west of the Mississippi River for your nation. You're in, oops, wait a minute, we've settled some in Wisconsin and Oklahoma, except for Wisconsin and Oklahoma. Whoop, wait a minute. And then they start in, before they implement the treaties, they take their nation away from them, literally just slaughter and butcher them. And the only reason we call the American Indian a savage is because we give them a place to call a reservation, like the Lakotas in South Dakota. See, we don't know nothing about America. And we gave them the Sioux Nation, we gave them, the only reason we call them barbarians is because, and savages, is because we give them a place. Did you know the Sioux was what it's supposed to be at the beginning, one of the most peaceful people that there was in the plains? The Sioux Indians, the ones that they called the savages. But the only reason they became so savage to the American Caucasians was because we gave them the Black Hills, and then General Sheridan in Washington said, Mr. Custer, we think that there's gold in them there Black Hills. Go in there, and if they're there, take it. That's what the Little Bighorn was about. I talked to one of Crazy Horse's descendants up in Rapid City when I was up there on vacation last. He said the Little Bighorn isn't what happened in the American history books. What we were doing was having a big fair, exchanging blankets and beads and stuff. And Mr. Custer was told to come in there. George Armstrong Custer was a maniac. And when you go to Rapid City, you'll see Thieves Road going up this way, and you will cross a bridge and it says Thieves River. It was all named after General George Armstrong Custer, because he was stealing their land. So he goes in there. If you drive somebody out of their house and finally you say, we're going to give you a little building out here behind the house to live in, then wait a minute, I think we buried some gold in there. Then you go in there and take it. You expect these people not to jump you when you go in there and try to take it back? America is living in blind, abject spiritual poverty. You know what? And I believe the battle is useless to convert America. America's not going to change.
That's right.
It's not going to change. This book will shock you. I just started into it, and you can't get through the introduction going, whew. Just amazing. One of the things he says in the introduction. Let me read this to you. The reason I'm doing this is because people say, we never heard that Christmas is pagan. Well, you never heard this stuff either. And our nation is packed full of lies. They said the European Caucasians were superior race to everybody else. I keep saying, I can't understand why the Caucasians think they're better, but it's been implanted into the American psyche, into the American mind. If I had to choose a race, and God let me pick the race, if he'd just review everything ahead of time, I certainly wouldn't pick being a Caucasian and identify with these maniacs and what they have done to the world. And not that the black man won't do the same thing if he gets in charge. Whoever is in power is corrupt. Whoever's ruling is corrupt. And if the black man gets in charge of America, and he multiplies and outnumbers the white people, you're going to get just as stupid as white people are. I just want to read this right here. He's talking about this history strips away so much cultural clutter and brings us information that until now has been practically impossible to find. Search the history books. Oh, this man is a lawyer. He's a professor of law, and he's an American Indian. And he researched all this. Brilliant man. Search the history books of American schools, and I challenge you to learn that there are over 550 Indian tribes in the United States with governmental powers over land and people. Nowhere will you learn that the U.S. Constitution recognizes treaties as the supreme law of the land, or that the U.S. Supreme Court has stated that a treaty was not a grant of rights to the Indians, but a grant of rights from them. A reservation of those not granted. And this is going on in America. Why? How do you think we're going to convince? The only people we're going to be able to get to see the truth about what's going on in this nation is the elect. They have ears to hear. He that hath an ear to hear, let him hear. And this is why I keep saying to you, you don't need to, the reason everybody has to go take these self-esteem courses is because everybody's trying to climb this ladder of success and get up here where the rich and the wealthy are. The rich and the wealthy say, we got to have self-esteem and climb up where they are. No, most of those people are in the gutter. You're standing on your head when you're looking at them. They're not up, they're down. There's none that seeks after God. There's none righteous, not one. All men drink iniquity like water. That means every human being you've ever seen. If you can get that in your mind, then you can know what's going on in the minds and hearts of other people. We're not going to be able to convince people that Christmas is pagan, or predestination is true, or God doesn't love everybody. The only people that will believe that is God's elect that have ears to hear, the hearing ear, and the seeing eye. The Lord hath made even both of them. You want to look at some of these books? I'll have them up here. You can go order them yourself. You can order Jefferson's Bible down at Books A Million or Barnes & Noble. You can get one. Mr. Jefferson threw away all the Old Testament and everything from Acts through Revelation, kept only the Gospels, and took a razor blade and cut out all references to the virgin birth and to miracles. He didn't, and a resurrection. He didn't believe in it. If Thomas Jefferson died that way, he went to hell, and I believe that's the way he died. We have been really lied to across the board in America. And usually it's the politicians that propagate all this. That's what it is. I'm not voting for any of those guys. I don't care who they are. If you run some guy for president that talks about a daily cross and death to self and self-denial and will preach this all through his administration, I'll vote for him. But how am I going to know he's going to do that? I'm not.
You'd be dead in the day.
All right, now, we're talking about Christmas. Christmas is the daily sacrifice of Jesus, is what it is. When the Roman Catholics raised if I really preached all I wanted to, I'd preach all day and all night for about 6 months. This is the best thing I can show you. This is a priest holding this is called Inside Catholicism. This is a book that we had a Roman Catholic priest, or a man that was going to be a Roman Catholic priest. He was in a convent up here, or in a monastery up in Kentucky, learning to be a priest. And he said, this book, he saw me pick this up, he said, this book is given to all new Catholics for their indoctrination into the Catholic Church. And it's about Catholicism, and they raise this Eucharist up, and they utter these words, Hoc est corpus eum filii. And they say this turns into the literal body and blood of Christ. And they get this. I started to say this the other week, and I didn't finish it. Over there in John 6. In John 6, and you start back, look over here in John 6. Look here. I want to remind you of this. Now, here's how they've twisted everything. John 6. And you start here in verse 51. I am the living bread. This is Jesus talking. That's in red letters. I am the living bread. This is where the Mass, where they fit it in. You ought to get some of these books. There's all kinds of books by historians that tell the truth about American history. The Sundown Towns was written by James Lowen, who wrote Lies My Teacher Told Me. I just was over at Barnes & Noble, and I said, do you have anything by James Lowen? And he said, we got Sundown Towns. And I was familiar with that. I lived in a section of Fort Worth, Texas, where it was against the law for a black man to walk into town. And it was a real lower section of town back in the 40s. Or back in 49, my father bought a little tract house, and they were about 700 square feet. And I couldn't understand it. Let me tell you something that... I'm going to tell you what the leaders of America have done. This is something most blacks do not understand. Most people in the 50s, most white people weren't prejudiced. They did not know what was going on because the blacks lived over here. The whites were completely segregated. They were segregated completely from the blacks. and you didn't see black people unless you went downtown. The people